So my name is Shahin PR. I'm working as a system architect with the connected infotainment practice at Tata Elxsi. And I'll be taking you through the first part of the presentation. And then my colleague Ranjit G, who is also a system architect in the cockpit area, he will handle the second part. And later, we'll be joined by Vikrant Bhange, who is heading the connected infotainment practice at Tata Elxsi. Okay, this is how our session is organized. So we'll start with an overview of Tata Elxsi, and we'll talk about the traditional and modern day architecture, which is followed in e-cockpit systems. Then we'll see the various OEM needs and the architecture challenges, then the major architecture approaches, and we do a comparative analysis of these approaches. And then we'll touch on to some of the future architecture considerations which we have. So Tata Elxsi is headquartered in Bangalore, India. It's a technology arm of the $110 billion Tata Group. Tata Elxsi is a 30-year-old company, relatively young in the 150-year-old Tata Group. We are about 6,500 engineers, out of which more than 3,000 are working in the automotive area. We have deep expertise in the automotive domain, and we work with leading OEMs and tier ones across the world in almost all the automotive verticals. We work globally with leaders in other industries as well, like telecom, consumer electronics, broadcast, multimedia, healthcare, and also enterprise software. With this, what we bring is not just deep capability in automotive, but really the influences and understanding of what is happening in these other industries also. Now, we do consumer research, technology consulting, product design, development, testing for all these industry sectors, actually. In automotive space, we work for the last 20 years, and we bring together an award-winning HMI and design team, an automotive SPICE Level 5 certified automotive engineering, and a world-class AI and analytics practice to create solutions for the autonomous and connected cars of the future. Today, we are going to discuss the architectural challenges and the various approaches for the digital cockpit system, otherwise called the e-cockpit. First, we look at the traditional architecture which we have been following till recently. So if we traditionally look at it, when we started, our cockpit was really a cluster, which was analog, and a radio with, let us say, AM/FM radio features only. Slowly, we added infotainment functions to it, like multimedia or navigation, Bluetooth, telephony, and so on. And we brought in touchscreen inputs to it, and then the steering wheel switches, and so on. But all these will be, it is kept as a separate ECU, or become what we call now as an infotainment head unit. Then we brought in connectivity. Then we had a new ECU, which is called connectivity ECU or the telematics ECU. Then the cluster became digitized. But still, we kept it as a separate ECU. Then the rear seat entertainment, another ECU. All these ECUs we collectively call the cockpit ECUs. Now we have other functional domains also, like powertrain, body control, driver assistance, and each will be having several ECUs which does their own dedicated functions. You can see these ECUs communicate through interconnection buses, the important one being CAN. And there are others also like LIN or MOST, Media-Oriented Systems Transport, or say Ethernet. Now, each ECU is controlled by a processor or a system on chip. Sometimes there will be multiple processors in an ECU. For example, in the case of infotainment head unit, we have a main processor or an application processor which handles the infotainment features like connectivity, graphical HMI rendering, and so on. And we have another controller in the infotainment head unit, which is called a vehicle processor. This is for handling the performance needs, like handling the vehicle connectivity, getting the timing right, then the power management, then early chimes. Those are the kind of features which for which we will be needing a vehicle processor. Now let us look at the general software architecture of some of these cockpit ECUs. So we are seeing a traditional software architecture for an IVI here. So IVI software follows a layered architecture model. So we have the platform software layer with the operating system, the board support package, the various drivers, or what you say, the MCAL layer, and the middleware layer, which consists of the feature services, the application layer, and the HMI. And we also have something called the messaging framework, which takes care of the communication between the HMI layer and the middleware layer. And we also have several abstraction layers like service abstraction or OS abstraction, which will help us in achieving portability. Now, on the left side, we can see an entire software stack for the vehicle processor also, which can be an AUTOSAR-based system, or it could even be non-AUTOSAR-based. Now we'll move ahead and we'll see the architecture of a cluster. So now we are having two types of cluster. One is a hybrid cluster, which is having analog as well as digital parts, and also a fully digital cluster. And mostly the hybrid cluster follows a classic AUTOSAR model with MCAL, then complex drivers or basic software, software components, application components, and so on. But when it comes to the digital cluster, it follows a similar model as an IVA. Here also we see a vehicle processor and a software stack in it. So when we look at these two architectures, the vehicle processor software in IVI and digital IC implements more or less a similar kind of functionality, like the performance needs of the system, connecting to the vehicle bus, getting signal from the other ECUs, and power management, and so on. In traditional systems, we can say that these are duplicated in two ECUs. We now move on to an architectural shift which is happening in these days, which is called ECU consolidation. Most of you are aware of that. As we have seen in the traditional architecture, when more and more features are added, the number of ECUs starts to grow. Many cars have more than 100 ECUs now. Now, what is the problem here? We end up needing more space or real estate for keeping these ECUs. And also we'll be needing more interconnection wiring. So all these will increase the overall weight of the car also. And these cause less power efficiency. Now, the most important thing is that these factors together can increase the cost of the vehicle. So people started thinking about ECU consolidation. That is combining multiple functional domains into a single ECU, rather than having a dedicated ECU for each. Now, this can bring down the number of ECUs. Mainly, the ECUs with similar functional requirements or come under the same functional domain are combined. No, the advantages we have here are we can have fewer ECUs, we can reduce the overall vehicle weight, we have improved power efficiency, and also we can bring down the overall cost of the vehicle. Now, here we can see a traditional system where there are a number of ECUs, but in the case of a modern day system, we have consolidated these ECUs, and these ECUs are called domain controllers. For example, we have a cockpit controller of the e-cockpit, which is the name commonly being used these days, where, let us say, infotainment and digital cluster and the head-up display are combined. Similarly, we also have ADAS or autonomous driving controller, which combines ADAS features like blind spot detection or lane departure warning or a pedestrian detection system. Also, we have body controller, which combines the vehicle body functions and so on. Now, the modern day approach, which is an integrated approach, okay, where we discuss e-cockpit or cockpit controller, which consolidates infotainment cluster and HUD into a single ECU. Such a consolidated ECU is shown in the first figure. So you can see we use more powerful processors for achieving the computing needs of all these domains together. But still, we have not consolidated everything which comes under the cockpit. Like, for example, telematics and V2X and ADAS are still staying apart. But now we have much more powerful SoCs from Semicons with high processing power, parallel processing capability with multi-core, then the hardware accelerators for graphics processing, and capable of driving more displays. So these are the SoCs which will be used for more consolidation of domains. So there are issues with the security core also. So we can see the connectivity gateway or secure gateway can also be integrated. So that architecture we are seeing in the second diagram, where we have more domains consolidated, like we have IVI, IC, head-up display, rear seat entertainment, telematics, ADAS, and secure gateway integrated into the same cockpit system. Now we look at the various OEM needs and the architectural challenges involved in this. So the vehicle cost reduction is one of the primary needs of an OEM. Like this requires the cost of individual systems also to be reduced. Now the system designer needs to consider ways to reduce the hardware bill of materials, the software bill of materials. Here we have off-the-shelf components, software components, software development cost involved, then the royalty associated with the software components, and so on. And also the validation cost. We need to think about using test automation to handle several iterations of testing in an efficient manner. Also, we must think of integration of more ECUs and subdomains, which can reduce the overall cost. This in turn brings the need for sharing IO and processing, or sharing the processors and peripherals for that instance, and the challenges associated with it. Now, the various ways to achieve domain isolation, the ways to share the peripherals, etc. Now, saving battery or reducing the power consumption is another important OEM need. Now, the design has to properly handle the power management aspects, especially now since more domains are consolidated, we have to pay special attention to bring an advanced power modeling mechanism. We need to follow a power-aware hardware design, need to have special circuits which offer flexibility to control many power rails independently. Sometimes there will be peripherals which will be used by two different domains. So the power management system need to consider that also for switching off the power rails. Now there are software goals also with the OEMs. From the design perspective, we have function safety requirements here from different domains coming together. Mixing functions with, let's say, different safety requirements is a challenge. Let us say IVI, which is having a SLA, for example, and ADAS, which is having an SLC, to be combined into a single e-cockpit system means it is going to add another level of design complexity. Now, the selection of components, both hardware and software, in such a consolidated solution pose its own problems, meeting specific SL levels for specific domains. We have homologation requirements, like we need to have special design considerations for this, achieving specific KPIs and safety standards specific to different markets, that too for various systems coming together. So it's a complex thing. So there are several standards like automotive industry standards in India, federal motor vehicle safety standards in the US, and so on. So these are to be considered in the system design. Now, we have to accommodate legacy design in the code from the OEMs. It is another need. So the system shall be flexible enough to accommodate this. The compatibility aspects of the legacy components which you are bringing into the system, it poses another challenge when it comes to the integration of that in the system. Now, the scalability aspects. Now, the system has to be capable to be scaled to address the needs of the different vehicle variants, vehicle segments, and the different target markets. For say, reuse of the system platform in a different vehicle program itself. Now, the design has to be flexible to accommodate these needs, as well as it has to be able to handle the requirements which can come up in the future. Now, we have a challenge for managing the software. Now, with consolidation, the whole system becomes more software-centric. So the maintenance is not an easy task here. It is going to be huge. The effort is going to be huge. And we need to reduce the development and maintenance effort, and also the product timeline. So we shall now look at the key elements to address these challenges. So the first thing is we have to use bigger high-performance SoC with parallel processing capability, multi-core. We need to make use of that for running a consolidated ECU. Now, we have to leverage the functional commonality, like I was telling about instrument cluster and IVI sharing the similar functionality in the vehicle core, vehicle processor. So in a consolidated system, we'll be having only a single instance of that. And we need to have domain isolation, which is one of the key elements. We are bringing in more domains together. So we should not have interference between these components. And of course, sharing of resources in an efficient manner between the domains. Multiple domains will be using the same peripherals. So there need to be an arbitration. So we have to use virtualization technologies. Like some of these challenges can be addressed only through virtualization. For example, the domain isolation part or the sharing of resources when everything is running in the same system. These high-performance SoCs will also support virtualization. There is a virtual mode associated with these processors. Also, we have to use specialized software which exposes the virtual system to each of these domains. Now we'll see the major architectural approaches in this e-cockpit or consolidated ECU scenario. We have seen that virtualization is one of the key elements for tackling several architecture challenges. So we'll spend some time on the different virtualization options first. First, we'll see a hypervisor. So hypervisor is a component which provides a hardware level virtualization. So it allows multiple guest operating systems to be run on top of it. It manages the hardware. It provides a virtual hardware exposed to the guest operating systems. So operating system will be thinking that it is working on a particular hardware. But hypervisor manages all these things. So we have several options available, like commercial options such as Greenhill's Multivisor, QNX hypervisor, then OpenSynergy's hypervisor, and also we have an open source option. There are a number of open source options. One of these is Zen, and we have another mechanism which is called the container. So it provides an OS level virtualization. It is only for the Linux only system. Or if you're using a Linux kernel, for example, Android is using a Linux kernel. So this container approach will work on Android also. So containers share the host OS kernel, and it uses the Linux features like C groups and namespaces for managing the isolation. So here also we have several options like Docker, LXC, LXD, and Core OS Rocket. These are all some of the examples. There are others also. So out of which LXC is one of the things which is more flexible. Like we can even have a system level virtualization using a container-based approach using LXC. We also have a third option which is not shown here, where there's a system partitioner which helps to create, let us say, hardware partitions and dedicating specific codes to specific domains. Anyway, we are not going into detail about it. Now we shall see some of the major architectural approaches built around the hypervisor and the container-based approaches. So I'm now handing over to Ranjit, who is my colleague, who will take you through the rest of the session.
Thank you, Shahan. Hi, everyone. Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon. I am Ranjit, working as a system architect for Digital Cockpit in Tata Elxsi. So far, we have discussed about modern day e-cockpit systems. We have seen various OEM needs and challenges in addressing them. Now, let us look at three different architectural approaches for e-cockpit systems. One based on hypervisor and two based on containers. We can derive many combinations based on the SOC capability, functional safety requirements, cybersecurity use cases, but finally the important parameter is the OEM need. Due to limited time, I am just touching the major three approaches. This picture shows the hypervisor approach. There are two parts of the hyper architecture. We have vehicle interface unit and graphics processing unit. The first one is interfaced with the vehicle and responsible for all the activities related to the vehicle functions. This can be AUTOSAR based or non-AUTOSAR based. The second one is responsible for all user interface related processing or graphics control and processing. This figure is familiar with many of us and more common nowadays. In this architecture, we have a dedicated microcontroller for all vehicle function processing, or we can even use separate real-time core inside the SoC itself. We have R7 core in ArcRH3 or M4 or M7 core in IMX8. We can have AUTOSAR or non-AUTOSAR based software stack running in vehicle processor or in the separate core. The application processor is running with an ASIL compliant hypervisor which support multiple partitions on top of it. Here, the first partition is safety compliant RTOS. We can also integrate the infrastructure components like lifecycle management, persistence, and so on in this RTOS partition. The hypervisor and RTOS together can handle the safety use cases for the instrument cluster. We shall be using Save Vehicle Function middleware, Safe Throw, and Safe Sound components for that. Also, the hypervisor will handle the overall display control and configuration. In the second partition, we have Linux as the guest OS. It can handle the non-safety functions of IC and HUD. Android Automotive is the third guest operating system and handles the use case of IV and RSE. We can add more domains by changing the hypervisor configuration. Here the hypervisor will manage the entire memory, CPU, and I/O devices. Different methods of display sharing can be possible, like front and back end, pass-through, etc. Depends on the hypervisor and the SoC flavors. Many flavors of hypervisor are available in the market, depends on our requirements. Selecting a right hypervisor is a big challenge that we are seeing from our multiple customers. Version migration of guest, for example Android, are easier in this approach, but some amount of support from hypervisor vendor is required for that. There are several commercial hypervisor options like Greenhill's Multivisor, QNX hypervisor, OpenSynergy hypervisor, etc. If we check the open source option, There is a project called Sen. The functional safety compliance of Sen is not at all guaranteed. There are many things to be explored on related to that. Here, we see first approach based on containers. As we discussed, the vehicle interface can be a separate microcontroller or a dedicated core in the main SoC. The specific details of the container and its difference between hypervisor is already mentioned by Shehan, and I have some dedicated slides which talk about detailed comparison later. The main change we can see here is instead of hypervisor, we are using a container running on top of Linux kernel. Container approach is based on Linux methodology and can be applied to any Linux flavored systems, for example Android or any other embedded Linux flavors. LXC is very popular option that being used nowadays. On top of native Linux, we have the different partitions running as different containers. The first container holds the infrastructure components or common components required in the system. For example, we have lifecycle, container management, health monitor, power management, persistency, or logging, so on. We can call this as a host container. Second container is used for instrument cluster and HUD functions. There are no rules that IC and HUD to be together. We can even run IC and HUD in different containers as well. IVA runs as a third container. We have fourth partition which is used for the reset entertainment. It is not easy to meet safety requirements in this approach. It should be separately designed, maybe with a separate microcontroller for instrument cluster telltale rendering, or could be an LED based telltale system that we need to explore more. This approach is lightweight and also a low cost one because of its open source nature and needing specialized hardware support, which is bringing a more overhead in comparing with the hypervisor based approach. Nowadays, Android IVE is becoming very popular. Bringing Android in Linux container is not that much easy, and we are also working on it. In this diagram, we will discuss the second approach based on containers, where we see how security and safety can be met to some extent. We are trying to address the safety and security aspects by utilizing the ARM trust zone feature in the SoC. Many studies are happening around this approach. Let us discuss on what is trust zone. It is a hardware isolation technology. It works by introducing a new, that is secure mode by during CPU operation. When operating in this new mode, the CPU can access all the hardware and memory. When operating in non-trust mode, only a subset of peripherals or a specific ranges of physical memory can be accessed. Secure world can be designed with security and safety modules. We can have the safe vehicle function middleware, monitoring utility, memory manager, etc. designed for safety. This will be in sync with the safety draw and safety sound blocks in the normal world. We also need the security specific modules inside the secure world. There are OPTE based components running in both secure world and normal world. OPTE means Open Portable Trusted Execution Environment. Once the system is booted up, the two operating systems, that is normal world operating system and secure world operating system, can communicate via a kernel mode mechanism. This approach was successfully used in smartphone domains, and studies and experiments are doing on the automotive space. If this is successful, then safety and security can be managed within low cost. Here you will see Tata Alex's reference eCockpit solution. We have used a combination of hypervisors and container. We can say it is a hybrid approach. We used RH850 as the vehicle interface MCU and ARCAR H3 as the graphics processor. We have Green Hills Multivisor and Integrity RTOS as running as host. There are two guest domains, Linux and Android, for the instrument cluster and the infotainment use cases. In Linux domain, we have multiple containers. IC as one container, ADAS is one container, and Adaptive AUTOSAR is another container. We have also integrated V2X information into the cluster. In the IVA domain, we have Android Automotive P, which handles all the infotainment use cases. Also, we have used some of our IPs in the solution, means classic AUTOSAR, Adaptive AUTOSAR stacks, sensor fusion algorithms are some of them. We have strong partnership with the Green Hills, and we have used Green Hills hypervisor and Integrity RTOS in our reference architecture. The functional safety aspects in this solution is handled inside the integrity partition. How to approach the functional safety use cases and what are things to be considered for achieving this, we will discuss in next slide. Let us see how a safety requirement from an OEM looks like. For example, say ABS lamp. The requirement description can be like ensure that the correct status of ABS lamp is sent to the display with the correct timing, size and shape. Please note the main parameters: timing, size and shape. We will have the ASIL level marked as maybe A. We will have the fault tolerance time marked as X millisecond, which can be ranging from 500 millisecond to 2000 millisecond. We will have a safe state definition, that is, if there is a failure happens, we have to revert back to a safety functionality. As most of you are aware, there is a dedicated safety lifecycle involved in the overall execution. But let us discuss only a design strategy in this slide. During design, we have to consider the functional safety aspects of major components, that is SOC, the hypervisor, the RTOS, the middleware and the application components. As per security and safety requirements, we have to draw the telltale in right time on the right place, and also the telltale should be right. The SOC provides a facility to render the contents in layer-wise, which can avoid the interference from other contents rendered in other layers. There could be non-SL contents of cluster or non-SL contents of infotainment being rendered in other layers as well. The safety compliant hypervisor and the RTOS can ensure that there is no interference from other partitions or other layers. If you look at the middleware component, can be classified into mainly three. One is input management, processing of signals, and the output handling. We have the IPC data, which should be end-to-end protected between the sender and receiver. The processing should be monitored for any issues using watchdog-based health monitoring. Data integrity check can be done by memory manager, and timing can be mentioned, also monitored by using specific timer modules. The output should be using layer management to ensure freedom from interference. We need to cross-check the integrity of the data via hardware CRC mechanism through display monitoring components. Like safety rendering, there should be a design approach for safe sound as well, which we have not covered in this slide. Let us discuss a high-level comparison of container and hypervisor approaches. In hypervisor approach, we have a new layer added on top of the hardware, and multiple guest operating systems are running on it. Each guest OS uses its own kernel and file system. In container approach, the container infrastructure is running inside the Linux host, which is very thin. Multiple containers are running in same host Linux. The guests will be sharing the same host Linux kernel and most of the components in the host Linux rootfs. That means container approach is using less disk space and hence it is lightweight, but hypervisor approach is heavy due to duplicated components. Hypervisor approach, the resources, for example, the CPU, memory, peripherals, etc. are managed through the hypervisor. Most of the time, all the guests need to request the host and the hypervisor to access the resources. And the resources to be used, configured in the hypervisor and allocated as startup, even if the guests are not using those at any given time. But for container approach, all the resources are directly accessible to the guest according to the permission granted. And also there is a flexibility if a container will request the resource at runtime if there is any free resources. Hypervisor based approach adds some overhead during runtime than compared to the container based approach. Also, hypervisor requires a hardware virtualization support in the SOC, but the container uses OS virtualization. Next, we will see some parameters, that is performance oriented, mainly CPU, memory, latency, and boot time. CPU and memory usage for containers will be less than hypervisor based approach. This is due to the duplication of guest kernel and the rootfs components in the hypervisor based system. Emulated hardware access from the guests in the hypervisor impose more latency for task execution compared to the direct access of hardware from the container guest. Container startup is similar to the traditional Linux startup. All the Linux fastboot optimization techniques we can apply here. Hypervisor booting strategy depends on type of hypervisor, number of guests, and the design of boot sequence. Next is the cost. Since the container-based infrastructure follows open source licensing, it is the lower cost option that we see now. Next, we can discuss something around the reliability aspects. The container infrastructure uses open source approach. The technology is transparent. Commercial hypervisors do not expose the internals. For any technical support, the hypervisor vendor involvement is necessary. If the Linux host kernel crashes due to any issues may be caused by the container, all the containers will be failed. Since they all rely on the same kernel, we need to restart system for the recovery. But for the hypervisor approach, there are dedicated monitoring and recovery mechanism available. During a guest OS crash, only that guest need to be restarted. Let us discuss about safety and security aspects as well. There are three major safety considerations, that is safety complaint by design, failure handling, and timeliness. Commercial hypervisors are offering all these features but containers will not have any inbuilt mechanism to support any of these aspects. Containers follow the host Linux kernel security mechanisms. We have, for example, Linux Security Manager, that is LSM, mandatory access control, and SE Linux and AppArmor policies, etc. Hypervisors offer security by design itself. It has hardware virtualization and it will ensure the isolation between domains and efficient sharing of resources. For an experiment analysis, to evaluate the performance parameters that we discussed above, we have selected some utilities like Sysbench, which is used for CPU and memory and disk performance, GLMark2 and PowerVR Tune for graphics performance, and NetPerf for network performance analysis. We are continuously observing the technology trends, and we have a dedicated research team to experiment and validate the trends. In the next session, we will discuss some interesting things we anticipate in future. Here we talk about new concept called the co-pilot. This is a system inside the vehicle which can always assist the driver on what to do, when to do. Look at the diagram on the right side. In the vehicle, there are a lot of sensor inputs, external warnings, state monitoring, etc. There are large amount of data or signals getting generated at a time. The driver alone is incapable of checking all this data. Here, the co-pilot system can assist. It will take all these inputs and process it, then gives that right assistance to the driver. System will be needing a continuous learning mechanism and a cognitive analytics part, which creates a context awareness on what is happening, what to be done. After that, the decision making is done by the system. There will be a conversational voice assistant which can speak to the driver and provide with the necessary assistance. Now we will see another futuristic concept, self-driving pods. Here a driverless car or a self-driving pod can take passengers from one place to another. These pods offer shared mobility. Also, it can give personalized experience. For example, there are 4 passengers. Each passenger can use their own displays, their own contents, or they can even bring their own devices. That is, bring your own device, the BYOD concept. Each passenger can have a personal experience in this scenario. Here we don't have the driver to actually decide how to do and when to do, and hence vehicle itself should assist the passengers. So there will be an intelligent assistant which can speak to the passengers similar to the one we saw in Copilot. With all these features coming, we have special architectural considerations. For example, for continuous learning and cognitive analytics that we have seen Copilot concept, we should be needing AI, the machine learning or deep learning engines. Similarly, for personalized features in self-driving pod, we should be needing multiple displays, audio zones, multiple inputs, and multiple outputs. All these points to the necessity of a high performance computing. We can use cloud computing technology for that. Now we have 5G connectivity coming up. We can have high bandwidth from the 5G. We can even consider using cloud-based ECU here, or maybe a hybrid approach with processing shared between a local SoC and a cloud-based computing engine. there could be load balancing between these computing elements. We see that we will have a paradigm shift in near future. A sample architecture in the future will look like this. We will have domain controllers consolidating different domains like chassis, body, cockpit, etc. Each domain controller is connected to a central gateway which is connected to the cloud. It can even have high performance computing engine for AI. This could follow a service-oriented architecture where services are hosted by domain controllers which can be discovered and used by other components. So we are now coming to the end of our presentation. To summarize, we have discussed the various OEM needs and architectural challenges involved in achieving these needs, especially the challenges with consolidating the ECUs. We have seen few architectural approaches where virtualization options like hypervisor and container could be used, various combinations to achieve security and safety. Also, we have seen some use cases which can come up in future and how the architecture should be evolved for handling those future use cases. So that is it. Hope it was informative.